The morning light slipped through the blinds, but it didn't bring me warmth. I pushed myself up slowly, leaning on my cane until the ache in my hip eased just enough for me to stand. My steps echoed in the kitchen, hollow and lonely, the kind of sound that makes you realize how quiet your house really is. Out of habit, I opened the fridge. I already knew what I'd see, but I still looked. Empty shelves. Nothing but a faint smell of cold air and disappointment. My stomach growled, sharp and cruel, reminding me that I hadn't eaten a real meal in 3 days. On the counter sat the only things left: half a bag of rice and a jar of instant coffee. I boiled water, poured myself a bitter cup, and tried to pretend the steam might somehow fill the emptiness in my body. But the hunger gnawed at me, louder than the silence around me. That's when her voice came back to me. Selena, my daughter, my only child. 2 days ago, she stormed in, perfume filling the room like smoke. She didn't say hello. She didn't ask how I was. She just grabbed the pension check I'd been saving for groceries. Disabled old woman, she sneered, her voice sharp as broken glass. You don't need much. Then she was gone, leaving me with nothing but the echo of her heels and the stench of betrayal. I gripped the edge of the counter to steady myself. My cane trembled in my hand, but not just from weakness. It was the humiliation that shook me the most. I gave her everything. I worked double shifts when my body was still strong. I scrubbed, cleaned, cooked, saved. Also, she would never go without. Yet here I was hungry, forgotten, treated like a burden in my own home. The rice on the counter mocked me. The empty fridge mocked me even more. And still, somewhere deep beneath the ache and the shame, something else stirred: anger. I wasn't always like this, frail, leaning on a cane, counting grains of rice to survive. Once, I was a woman who carried entire households on my back. A woman who believed sacrifice was just another word for love. Now, that love had been twisted into a weapon against me. My daughter, the same girl I raised with trembling hands and endless nights, looked at me not with love, but with calculation. To her, I wasn't her mother anymore. I was an obstacle, a source of money, something to drain until nothing was left. I took a sip of the bitter coffee. It burned my throat, but I swallowed it down anyway. And as I set the cup back on the counter, my mind flashed again to the moment she ripped the check from my hands. Her eyes didn't even hold shame, only greed. For a moment, I thought about collapsing right there, giving in, letting her win. But then, something inside me hardened. No, I would not collapse in front of her cruelty. I would not let her believe she had broken me. I was hungry, yes. My body was weak, yes. But my spirit still had fight left. I lifted my cane, pressing it firmly against the floor, as if staking a claim on my own life. Selena might think she had stripped me of everything, but she hadn't taken the most important thing yet: my will. And as I stood there in that silent kitchen, with nothing but rice, coffee, and the echo of her cruelty, I made myself a promise. This was not the end of me, not yet. The third night without food was the hardest. Every time I closed my eyes, I dreamed of bread thick, warm slices with butter melting into them. But when I woke, all I had was the cold ache of hunger curling inside me. I tried to distract myself by cleaning, but my hands trembled too much. The cane felt heavier than usual, and each step across the floor rattled through my bones. That's when I heard it, the front door. The sound froze me in place. My heart beat fast, too fast for someone with nothing in her stomach. And then I saw her, Selena, walking in as if she owned the place. Still alive, I see, she muttered, tossing her purse on the chair. She didn't look at me, not really. She only looked around, as if checking whether I had found food somewhere. She hadn't taken from me. I opened my mouth, but before I could speak, she moved closer. Her heels clicked like a countdown. Where's the cash, mother? She snapped. I don't have any left, I whispered. My voice cracked, thin as paper. Her eyes narrowed. Don't lie to me. I held my cane tighter, but that only made her angrier. In one swift motion, she shoved me, hard. The world spun. My body struck the floor with a crack so sharp it stole the air from my lungs. A pain shot through my leg, white hot, spreading like fire. For a moment, I couldn't even scream. Just the taste of dust in my mouth, the sound of my cane clattering away. I tried to move, but the pain in my hip, my fragile, already aching hip, told me the truth. Something inside me had broken. Selena didn't rush to help. She didn't even look worried. She just stood over me, her lips curling with irritation. You old fool, she hissed. You should have just given me what I asked for. The betrayal cut deeper than the pain. I stared up at her, my own daughter, towering above me as if I were nothing but a nuisance in her way. I wanted to believe she'd come back to her senses, that the girl I once held in my arms would remember the lullabies, the nights I stayed awake rocking her through fevers. But there was nothing in her eyes. No daughter, no love. Only hunger, not for food, but for control. Tears slipped down my cheeks, not from the pain in my bones, but from the weight pressing on my heart. How had we gotten here? How had my child, the one I gave everything for, become this stranger who could knock me to the ground without a second thought? She grabbed her purse again, muttering curses under her breath. Pathetic, she spat, before walking out the door, and just like that, I was alone again. Alone with a shattered hip, a body too weak to rise, and a silence so heavy it felt like it might smother me. For hours, I lay there on the floor, staring at the ceiling. My tears dried into salty streaks, but the pain in my body only sharpened. The clock ticked. The light in the room shifted from day to dusk to night, and still, I couldn't move. A part of me thought, maybe this was it. Maybe she'd finally gotten what she wanted. My silence, my absence, my end. But even as the shadows grew around me, even as hunger twisted with pain until I could hardly tell them apart, something inside me whispered again, no, I would not give her this. Not my last breath, not my surrender. If my bones were broken, then I would find a way to heal. If my trust was shattered, then I would build something new out of the pieces. Selena wanted me weak. She wanted me silent. She wanted me gone. But I wasn't gone, not yet. And as the night wrapped around me like a shroud, I made myself another promise. One day, she would see. One day, she would know. The mother she tried to break was not broken. The floor had become my prison, cold against my cheek, hard against my back. Every breath was shallow, laced with the ache of my shattered hip. The hours crawled by, marked only by the tick of the clock and the growl of my empty stomach. I told myself not to cry anymore. Tears were wasted water, and I needed every drop inside me to survive. But when the pain surged sharp, merciless, I couldn't stop the sobs from slipping out. I thought of food. Not feasts, not meals, just the simplest things. A spoon of rice, a slice of bread. Even the memory of oatmeal, plain and thin, felt like luxury now. Hunger wasn't just gnawing at my stomach anymore, it was clawing at my mind, whispering doubts, trying to strip away the little strength I had left. But louder than hunger was fear. What if she didn't come back? What if I was found days later, only a body on the floor, still clutching at nothing? I shook the thought away, forcing myself to breathe. I had lived too long, fought too hard, to let my end come like this. Hours blurred into one another, and then I heard something, a knock, gentle, hesitant. Not her. Selena never knocked. My heart stumbled. Mrs. Rowe? A voice, small, uncertain. It was Leela, the neighbor's little girl, 10 years old maybe, always shy, always trailing behind her mother on the way to school. I tried to call out, but my voice broke, rasping like dry leaves. Still somehow, she heard me. The door creaked open, small footsteps entered, and then a gasp. Mrs. Rowe. Her eyes widened as she rushed to my side. She knelt, her school bag slipping to the floor, her hands trembling as she reached for mine. You're hurt, she whispered. I managed a nod, though even that sent a wave of pain through me. Don't move, I'll get my mom, she said, already scrambling to her feet. No, I croaked. My voice was barely more than air. Wait, please. She froze, watching me with wide, tearful eyes. I didn't want her mother here. Not yet. Not with questions I couldn't answer. Not with shame pressing so heavy on my chest. Water, I whispered. Please, water. Her eyes darted around the room, and then she spotted the half-empty glass on the table. She grabbed it and helped me drink, her small hands steady despite her trembling. The water slid down my throat like mercy. For the first time in days, my body felt something other than emptiness. Thank you, I breathed. She nodded quickly, her lip quivering. You need help, real help. I wanted to tell her everything, that my daughter had done this, that the hunger wasn't just neglect but cruelty. But the words stuck, heavy and sour. How could a child carry a burden I couldn't even name aloud? So instead, I squeezed her hand. Just don't tell anyone yet. Not yet. She looked at me, confused, but nodded anyway. And then, as if guided by something beyond her years, she reached into her school bag. She pulled out a sandwich squashed a little, wrapped in foil, and placed it gently in my hand. "It's tuna," she said softly. "I don't like tuna much." My throat tightened. My hands shook as I unwrapped it. The smell hit me first, sharp and salty, and I nearly wept. I took a small bite, just a small one, but it felt like salvation. Food. Real food. I chewed slowly, tears slipping down my cheeks, while she sat beside me in silence. For the first time in days, the ache of hunger eased. For the first time in weeks, I didn't feel entirely alone. Hope. It was small, fragile, wrapped in foil by the hands of a child. But it was there, and as the sandwich disappeared bite by careful bite, I knew one thing. I wasn't finished. My body might have been broken. My trust might have been shattered. But somewhere between the hunger and the pain, a spark had returned. Selena wanted me weak. But she had overlooked something. Even in the darkest nights, even in the coldest hunger, hope finds a way in. Night returned like a thief. The shadows stretched longer, pressing close around me as the house fell silent again. Leela had gone hours ago, leaving me with half a sandwich in my stomach and a promise in my chest. Her kindness lingered like a candlelight, but when the door closed behind her, the darkness crept back in. My body was grateful, yes, but my mind was restless. Every creak of the walls, every groan of the wind made me wonder, what if Selena came back tonight? Would she find me with food in my stomach, strength returning to my eyes? Would she punish me for daring to survive when her intention had been the opposite? The thought coiled tight in my gut. I tried to sleep, but hunger had trained my body to wake at every sound. So instead, I listened to the walls, to the silence, to the faintest hum of something inside me I hadn't felt in years. A whisper, not a voice, not exactly, more like memory. "You've endured worse," it said, and it was true. I had. I thought of the night Selena's father left me with a baby on my hip and bills stacked on the table. I had survived then, hadn't I? I thought of winters when the heating failed, when blankets were all that stood between us and the cold. I had found a way through, always. This time would be no different. But survival isn't just food. Survival is strategy. So I began to plan. When Leela came tomorrow, I would ask for more than water, more than a sandwich, something small, hidden, enough to keep me alive without raising suspicion. Selena couldn't know, not yet, that hope had returned, because if she knew, she'd crush it. My thoughts were interrupted by a faint scratching at the door. My heart raced. For a moment, I thought it was Selena. I held my breath, listening, but then soft paws patted against the floor. It was the neighbor's cat, a black and white stray that often wandered between houses. He slipped inside through the half-open door. Leela must have forgotten to close fully. He meowed once, looking at me with curious green eyes, then curled against my arm, warmth, unexpected, alive. I pressed my fingers into his fur, feeling the steady rhythm of his body. I hadn't realized how much I missed touch. Not violent hands, not dismissive ones, just presence. The cat purred, and the whisper inside me grew louder. "You're not alone." For the first time since the fall, I allowed myself to believe it. I closed my eyes, imagining what came next. Not just survival, but escape. Not just enduring Selena's cruelty, but ending it. But how? The question circled as dawn began to break, soft light cutting through the curtains. My body still ached. My hips still screamed, but there was clarity now where there hadn't been before. Selena thought she had trapped me. She thought hunger would be my undoing, but she underestimated the stubbornness that had carried me all my life. Leela's sandwich had done more than feed me. It had reminded me that kindness still existed, even in small, fragile forms. The cat's purring reminded me that warmth could find its way in, even uninvited. And deep inside, the whisper reminded me that I was still here, alive. I tightened my grip on the foil that had once wrapped the sandwich. A small thing, worthless to most. But to me, it felt like a talisman, a reminder that survival could begin with scraps. I wasn't strong enough to fight yet, not strong enough to run, but I could wait, plan, gather what I needed, piece by piece. When the moment came, I would be ready, because survival wasn't just about enduring pain. It was about turning pain into power, and I had plenty of pain to work with. So as the morning sun crept higher, I whispered it aloud for the first time, my voice weak but steady. "I will not die here." The cat lifted its head, as if it had heard me. Neither of us moved. Neither of us needed to. The words themselves were enough, a promise, a vow, and deep down, I knew this was only the beginning. The day stretched slow, heavy, like the walls themselves were watching me. After my whispered vow, something inside had shifted. My body still felt weak, fragile, but my mind was sharper than it had been in weeks. Survival wasn't just instinct anymore. It was choice, but choice came with risk. Selena would return soon. I knew her patterns. She liked to appear when I was weakest, to remind me of the cage she believed I belonged in. If she saw even a flicker of strength in my eyes, she'd tighten her grip. So I had to act carefully. Quietly, the cat still lingered near me, curled at the foot of the couch. His presence steadied me, a small reminder that life still moved beyond Selena's cruelty. I stroked his fur, whispering under my breath, "You'll keep my secret, won't you?" He purred in reply, and for the first time in years, I smiled without fear. When Leela slipped back later that afternoon, her face carried the same mixture of guilt and defiance. She set down another small packet of food, glancing toward the door, as though Selena might materialize at any second. "I don't have long," she whispered, "but I brought this. Crackers, cheese, even an apple." My throat tightened at the sight. "Leela," I breathed, "you don't know what this means." "I do," she said, her voice trembling. "But if Selena finds out, she won't," I interrupted, sharper than I intended. Her eyes widened, and I softened my tone. "She won't. I'll make sure of it." Because that was the rebellion. Not loud, not violent, silent, hidden. A rebellion made of crumbs and whispered promises. When she left, I ate slowly, forcing myself not to devour everything at once. Hunger had trained me to ration, but this was different. This was fuel for more than survival, it was fuel for escape. I studied the apple core after I finished. Selena would see trash as trash, but I saw something else. A seed. A reminder that even the smallest thing could hold possibility. That night, when Selena finally came, I forced my face into emptiness. My body slumped, my breathing shallow. She stood over me with arms crossed, her eyes scanning for weakness like a predator sniffing the air. "You look thinner," she said with mock concern. "You're fading fast." I nodded, letting my lips part as though speaking required too much effort. I wanted her to believe it, to keep underestimating me. "Good," she murmured. "Maybe soon you won't have the strength to fight back at all." Her words stung, but I held still. Silent rebellion meant hiding the spark until the time was right. When she left, I let out the breath I'd been holding, my chest aching from restraint. The cat leapt onto my lap, pressing his warmth against me. I stroked him once, whispering, "Not yet." But soon, each day that followed, the rebellion grew. Leela brought more food in secret, sometimes just bread, sometimes more. I hid pieces in the folds of the couch, beneath old blankets, places Selena would never check. It wasn't much, but it was enough. Enough to keep me alive, enough to remind me that I was not powerless. Selena believed she was starving me into silence, but silence had become my weapon. Every quiet nod, every feigned weakness, every crumb hidden away was defiance, and though my body still ached, I felt its strength seeping back in, drop by drop. The whisper inside me was no longer faint. It had become a steady voice. "You are preparing." Yes, preparing. The thought carried me into the next dawn, my eyes open, my chest rising steady. For the first time in a long time, I didn't fear the day. I was waiting, watching, gathering, and when the moment came, I would not whisper anymore. I would rise. The air in the house grew heavier with each passing day, as though the walls themselves sensed my awakening. Selena still believed. She held me tight in her grip, but I could feel the cracks forming, small, almost invisible, but widening with each secret crumb, each hidden breath of strength. I had learned to mask it well. My body slouched, my voice weak, my gaze distant. To her, I was still wilting, but inside, something sharp was returning, and perhaps she sensed it too, because lately, her visits had grown longer. She lingered in the room, circling me like a hawk circling prey it wasn't sure was dead. Her words, once casual in their cruelty, now carried an edge of suspicion. "You've been quiet," she said one evening, narrowing her eyes. "Too quiet." I let my lips part slightly, whispering, "I'm tired." Her gaze searched me. My skin prickled beneath it, but I forced my breath shallow, my eyes dull. The performance was everything now. One slip, and she'd know. Finally, she turned away, muttering under her breath. But I caught it anyway. Silence isn't always weakness. The words sent a chill through me. Did she suspect? Or was it only paranoia eating her alive? Either way, I couldn't falter. Leela visited less often now. Fear shadowed her eyes whenever she did. Once, she placed the food down with trembling hands and whispered, "She's watching me. I can't keep coming." "Then stop," I whispered back. "Don't risk yourself." Her chin quivered, her eyes shining. "But if I stop, I'll survive," I interrupted, softer now. "I have to." She hesitated, then nodded, slipping out like a ghost. Alone again, I pressed my hand to the couch cushion where I'd hidden the last of the bread. It wasn't much, but it was enough to buy me time. Time to wait, time to plan. That night, as the wind rattled against the windows, I couldn't sleep. My mind replayed Selena's muttered words. Silence isn't always weakness. She was right. My silence wasn't weakness anymore. It was armor. It was weapon. But weapons drew attention. The next morning, she entered earlier than usual. Her footsteps were sharp, her breath heavy. She carried nothing in her hands, no tray, no cruel offering, just herself. "Stand," she ordered. My heart jolted, but I kept my expression blank. "I can't," I whispered. "You can," she snapped. "You will." She reached for me, her fingers gripping my arm, yanking me upward. Pain seared through me, my knees trembling, but I forced my body to sag as though the weight was unbearable. Her eyes narrowed. She studied me, her grip tightening. "You're lighter," she said, almost to herself. "But your eyes." She stopped. I froze. "My eyes?" I asked, letting weakness drip into the words. For a long moment, she didn't answer. Then with a scoff, she shoved me back onto the couch. "Don't look at me like that," she muttered, turning away. I held still, my heart pounding against my ribs. She had seen something, just a flicker, but it was enough. The cracks were widening. After she left, I pressed my palms against my face, my breath ragged. I couldn't afford another mistake. My silence had carried me this far, but now it had to become more than silence. It had to become strategy. I needed more than crumbs. I needed an opening. The cat jumped onto the windowsill, tail flicking, his gaze fixed on the outside world, so close and yet unreachable. I followed his stare, my chest aching. "Soon," I whispered, and I meant it, because cracks don't just weaken walls, they bring them down. And Selena's walls were beginning to tremble. The silence had protected me, but now it was being tested. Selena had grown restless. I could feel it in the way she entered the room, abrupt, charged, her eyes scanning everything as though even the dust might betray me. She no longer brought food herself. That task was handed to Leela again, though under sharper watch. Poor Leela's hands shook worse each time, her voice reduced to hurried whispers. If she spoke at all, it was Selena's way of telling me, "I control the air you breathe. Don't forget it." But I hadn't forgotten. I had learned. One evening, she stood over me longer than usual. The curtains were drawn tight, the single bulb above us humming faintly. "You think I don't notice," she said. Her voice was calm, almost casual. That was what made it worse. "Notice what?" I asked softly, careful not to meet her eyes too directly. "The way you've changed. The way you watch. You hide it well, but I see it. There's something different in you." My breath caught, but I let it slip out as a shallow sigh. "I'm tired, that's all." She leaned closer, her perfume sharp and suffocating. "Tired doesn't sharpen the eyes. Tired doesn't make silence dangerous." Her words pierced through me. My heart beat so loudly I was sure she could hear it. Still, I kept my face blank, my voice weak. "You're imagining things." For a long, heavy pause, she studied me. Then she smiled, a thin, cruel curve of her lips. "Maybe I am, but we'll see." The next day, the test began. She brought no food, no water, just herself and a chair she dragged into the center of the room. She sat down across from me, folding her arms. "Today," she said, "we talk. No whispers, no excuses. I want to hear what silence has been hiding." Panic shot through me, but I masked it quickly. If I spoke too much, she'd see. If I stayed too quiet, she'd suspect. The balance was razor thin. So I did what I had always done. I answered just enough. Yes, no, I don't know. Each response was measured, small, coded in exhaustion. Hours passed like this. Her questions grew sharper. "What do you dream about? What do you remember? What do you want?" I gave her nothing, just fragments, half breaths of words, Finally, her patience cracked. She shot up from the chair, her hand gripping my chin, forcing my gaze to hers. Say it, she hissed. Say what you're hiding. My throat tightened. The room spun. I wanted to scream, to spit the truth at her face. But that would be the end. So I whispered, barely audible. I'm afraid. Her eyes searched mine. For a moment, I thought she'd see through it all. Then she let go, stepping back, a satisfied smirk spreading across her face. Good, she said. Fear keeps you where I want you. She left soon after, slamming the door behind her. I collapsed into myself, trembling, every nerve screaming. She thought she'd won. She thought she'd broken me deeper. But in that moment, I knew something she didn't. I hadn't broken. I had held. The silence she tested hadn't betrayed me, it had protected me. Even under her hand, her gaze, her trap. And if I could survive this test, then I could survive the next. Night fell heavy, the house sinking into shadows. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, listening to the faint hum of the bulb above me. Selena believed silence kept me small. She didn't know silence was the shield I had sharpened into a blade, and soon, she would feel its edge. The night after Selena's test, the air in the room felt heavier, like the walls themselves had been listening. I didn't sleep. My body begged for rest, but my mind throbbed with a restless clarity. Every second of silence became another thread I had to hold together, tightly woven, or everything would unravel. Hours crawled by until I heard it, the faintest scratch against the door. My chest tightened. It wasn't Selena's heavy, deliberate steps. This was softer, careful. Then came the whisper, "It's me, Leela." I shifted on the mattress, careful not to make the floor creak. Why? My voice barely stirred the air. A pause. Then, I shouldn't, but I had to check on you. She doesn't know. The words landed like stolen light in the dark. For a moment, warmth pressed against the cold fear that had been growing inside me. She tested me today, I whispered back. She knows something's wrong. You have to be careful. Leela's voice cracked. I saw her face when she left. She thinks you're broken. That's the only reason I could come now. I let out a shaky breath. Then we need to keep it that way. There was another silence between us, heavier this time. I felt the weight of what neither of us dared to say. Escape. Her whisper returned, rushed, trembling. She's planning something worse. I heard her on the phone. She said you wouldn't last another week. The words chilled me. Not just the threat, but the certainty in Selena's voice, repeated now through Leela's. What do you mean? I pressed. She didn't say how, just that she'd make sure. Please, if you have any way out. Her breath hitched, cutting the whisper short. Footsteps, not Leela's light shuffle, not the cautious scratch of her nails on wood. This was slower, heavier, measured. Selena. Leela vanished from the other side of the door without a sound. My pulse hammered as the lock turned, and the door opened. She stepped inside, dressed in her robe, hair falling loosely over her shoulders, as though she had just woken from a restless dream. But her eyes, sharp, gleaming, said otherwise. Still awake? She asked, her tone sweet, syrupy. I forced myself to nod weakly, blinking as if exhaustion blurred my sight. She walked closer, her steps deliberate, savoring each one. Strange. Most people break faster when they're afraid. But you, she tilted her head, studying me like a specimen. You hold on, longer than I expected. My throat tightened, but I forced out the same word I'd given her before. Afraid? She smiled, slow and cold. Yes, but fear doesn't always save. Sometimes it betrays. She leaned down until I could feel her breath against my cheek. I wonder how long until yours does. The bulb overhead flickered, buzzing louder, as if the house itself strained against her presence. Then, just as suddenly as she came, she straightened and moved toward the door. Sleep well, she said softly, almost kindly. Tomorrow, we begin again. The lock clicked behind her. Only then did I let my body tremble. Leela's whisper replayed in my head. She said you wouldn't last another week. I lay back, staring at the ceiling, pulse racing, every muscle tight with dread. The silence pressed closer, heavier, but I clung to it all the same. Selena thought silence would wear me down. She didn't know it was the one thing keeping me alive. But now, I understood something more. If I didn't move soon, if I didn't find a way past her tests, her eyes, her endless games, silence wouldn't protect me. It would bury me.